The little girl knocked on the window of the most dangerous man in Chicago. He rolled it down, and everything changed. In a city where power is bought with blood and mercy is a weakness that gets you killed, one man was about to learn that the strongest thing he'd ever do wasn't building an empire. It was kneeling down to a child's level and saying 2 words. You're safe now. Welcome to Crimson Stories, where broken people find their way back to the light through the most unexpected connections. If you believe that even the most ruthless hearts can learn to love again, hit that subscribe button and smash that like. We bring you new emotional journeys every single day. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Now, let's see how 3 days in a frozen parking lot changed 5 lives forever. The wind howled across the empty gas station lot like something alive and hungry. Melanie Carter pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around Zoe, feeling her 2-year-old small body shivering even through 3 layers of clothing. In the back seat, Isaac sat rigid and silent, the way 6-year-old boys do when they're trying not to cry. Mary pressed her face against the fogged window, breath creating small circles of clarity that disappeared as fast as they formed. "Mommy," Isaac whispered. His voice cracked. "It's been 3 days." Melanie's throat closed. She stared at the gas station entrance, the same fluorescent-lit doorway Derek had walked through 72 hours ago. He'd said he was going inside to use the bathroom, to get coffee, that he'd be right back. The car had been running then. Now it was a frozen metal coffin. "He's coming back," she heard herself say. The lie tasted like metal, like the blood she'd swallowed the last time Derek's fist had connected with her mouth. Daddy he needed time to think. "About what?" Mary asked. She was 4, old enough to know something was wrong, too young to understand that monsters don't always look like monsters, that sometimes they look like your father. Melanie didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth, that Derek had finally done what he'd been threatening for months, that he'd left them with nothing, that every credit card was maxed and every account was empty, would break something in her children that she didn't know how to fix. The gas station manager appeared in the doorway. Melanie recognized his stance before she saw his face. Arms crossed, jaw set. She'd been a waitress long enough to read body language like a second language, and his said exactly one thing. "You need to leave." He walked toward their car with purpose. Melanie's pulse spiked. She reached for the door handle, then stopped. Where would she go? They were 40 miles outside Chicago, in a neighborhood she didn't recognize, with 3 children and $17 in her wallet. The manager knocked on her window. Melanie rolled it down an inch. Cold air rushed in like knives. "Ma'am." His voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "I've been patient, but it's been 3 days. I'm going to have to call the police if you don't move your vehicle." "Please." The word came out broken. "Just one more night. He's coming back. I know he's coming back." The manager's expression shifted. Pity now. Somehow that was worse. "Ma'am, your car won't start. You haven't bought anything in 2 days. And it's supposed to drop below 0 tonight." He glanced at the children. Something in his face softened. "I'm calling social services." "No." Melanie's voice came out sharp, desperate. "Please, don't. I'll figure something out. Just please don't call anyone." But he was already walking away, pulling his phone from his pocket. That's when Mary moved. Before Melanie could stop her, the 4-year-old threw open the car door and ran. Not toward the gas station, toward the black Audi idling at Pump 3. "Mary!" Melanie lunged, but Zoe was in her lap, and by the time she'd fumbled the toddler into Isaac's arms, Mary was already at the Audi's window, small fists pounding on tinted glass. The window rolled down. Melanie's heart stopped. The man inside was not someone you approached. Everything about him screamed danger. From the tailored black suit that probably cost more than Melanie's car, to the sharp angles of his face, to the way he held himself like violence was always an option. Dark eyes assessed Mary with the cold calculation of someone used to making split-second decisions about who lived and who disappeared. "Sir," Mary said, and her voice was so small, so heartbreakingly hopeful. "We've been waiting here 3 days for Daddy." She paused. Her bottom lip trembled. "He's not coming back, is he?" The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something Melanie couldn't read. "Mary, get back here right now." Melanie was out of the car now, moving fast, but not fast enough. Never fast enough. Richard Grimson had been reaching for his coffee when the child appeared. He'd stopped at this particular gas station because it was off the grid, because none of his men knew about it, because sometimes even a crime lord needed 5 minutes where no one was asking him to authorize a hit or negotiate territory. The little girl shouldn't have been his problem. But then she spoke. And Richard was 7 years old again, watching through a car window as his father's fists turned his mother's face into something unrecognizable. He remembered the cold, remembered the way his mother had whispered, "Stay in the car," baby, even as she bled onto the pavement of a gas station just like this one. Remembered waiting 3 days for someone, anyone, to help. No one had come. His mother died in that parking lot while strangers walked past. Richard looked at the little girl, at her too thin coat with the hole in the elbow, at the desperate hope in her eyes that was already starting to die. Behind her, a woman stumbled forward. Mid-20s, maybe. Auburn hair falling out of a messy bun, eyes hollow with exhaustion, and something darker, fear. She grabbed the child's shoulders, pulling her back. "I'm so sorry," the woman stammered. "She didn't mean to bother you. We're leaving. Right now." Richard's gaze moved past her to the beat-up sedan, to the 2 other children visible through the window, to the frost on the inside of the glass that meant they'd been sleeping in there for days. "Where's your husband?" His voice came out harder than he intended. The woman flinched. She stopped, started again. "He's coming back." She was lying. Richard had built an empire on reading people, and this woman was a terrible liar. Her husband wasn't coming back. He'd left her here, left them all here. Richard's jaw tightened. He thought about driving away, about minding his own business, about the meeting he had in an hour with a weapons dealer who'd kill him if he was late. Then he looked at the little girl again. She was staring at him with eyes that were too old for 4. Eyes that had seen things children shouldn't see. Just like his eyes, when he was that age. "Get in," Richard said. The woman blinked. "What?" "Your car won't start. It's going to be -10 tonight. You have 3 children." He met her eyes. "Get in the car." "I don't..." She shook her head. "I can't just get in a stranger's car, then freeze." Richard's tone was flat. "Those are your options." The woman's hands were shaking. Not from cold. From fear. Of him. Richard understood. He was used to people being afraid of him, had built his reputation on it. But something about the way she held her daughter, fierce and protective even while trembling, made his chest feel strange. The gas station manager was walking toward them now, phone still in hand. "Ma'am, I've called..." "We're leaving," Melanie heard herself say. She didn't know why. Didn't know if she was making the worst decision of her life or the only decision that made sense. But Mary was looking at the man in the Audi like he was salvation, and Isaac was crying silently in the car, and Zoe hadn't stopped shivering in 2 days. She gathered her children. The man in the Audi, suit too expensive, jaw too sharp, eyes too cold, opened the back door without a word. Isaac hesitated. Mom? It's okay. Melanie's voice broke on the lie. He's going to help us. As they climbed into the Audi, into warm leather seats that smelled like luxury Melanie had forgotten existed, she caught the man's reflection in the rearview mirror. He was staring straight ahead, jaw tight, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. "Where are we going?" Melanie whispered. Richard didn't answer right away. He put the car in drive, pulled out of the gas station, left the broken sedan and the last 3 days behind. "Somewhere warm," he finally said. Mary, already falling asleep against the heated seat, mumbled something that sounded like, "Thank you." Richard's hands tightened on the wheel. 45 minutes later, the Audi turned through iron gates that opened automatically. Melanie stared at the mansion appearing through the snow, all stone and glass and impossible wealth. "This is where you live?" Isaac breathed. Richard parked, turned to face them. "One night," he said. His voice was hard, final. "You stay tonight. Tomorrow I'll arrange somewhere else for you." Melanie nodded. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt something else. Something she couldn't name. Richard led them inside. The warmth hit like a physical force. Mary started crying. Not sad crying, but the kind of crying that comes when your body finally feels safe enough to fall apart. "Sophia," Richard called. A woman appeared, older, kind-faced. "Draw a bath. Get them food, clean clothes." "Of course, Mr. Grimson." Sophia's eyes widened when she saw the children, but she didn't ask questions. As Sophia led the children away, Melanie turned to the man who'd saved them. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know why you helped us, but—" "Don't." Richard's voice cut like glass. "Don't thank me. Just get your kids warm." He walked away before she could respond, disappeared into a room at the end of the hall, and shut the door hard enough that Melanie flinched. Inside his office, Richard poured scotch with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. On his desk was a photograph he kept face down. He picked it, up now, stared at the woman in the picture, his mother, young and smiling, before his father destroyed her. "I'm sorry I was too late," he whispered to the photograph. Outside, he could hear Mary laughing. The sound was so pure, so untouched by the world, that it physically hurt. Richard had made a promise in a parking lot 23 years ago. A promise that he would never ignore a child in danger, never look away, never be too late again. He'd kept that promise. But as he listened to the sound of children filling his empty house, he realized with cold certainty that one night was going to turn into something he wasn't prepared for. Something that terrified him more than any rival, any weapon, any war. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Richard didn't sleep. He stood at his office window watching snow fall over the city, trying to ignore the sounds drifting through the mansion, running water, quiet voices, the creak of floorboards that hadn't borne the weight of children in 2 decades. His phone buzzed. Marcus, his right hand. Meeting in 4 hours. Kozlov's getting impatient. Richard typed back, "I'll be there." He wouldn't mention that he had 3 children and a terrified mother sleeping in his guest wing. Marcus would ask questions Richard didn't want to answer. Questions like why and what were you thinking and since when do you play savior? The truth was, Richard didn't know. He'd built his empire on being untouchable, on making decisions without emotion, on understanding that sentiment was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. Then a 4-year-old had knocked on his window, and 23 years of carefully constructed walls had developed cracks. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Grimson?" Sophia stood in the doorway, her expression caught between concern and something else. "The children are asleep, but the mother, she won't come out of the bathroom." Richard's jaw tightened. Define won't come out. She's been in there an hour. I hear crying. She won't open the door. Richard was moving before he decided to move. He took the stairs 2 at a time, muscle memory carrying him to the guest wing. Outside the bathroom door, he stopped. Sophia was right. There was crying, muffled, desperate. The kind of crying someone does when they think no one can hear. Richard knocked once. Mrs. Carter. The crying stopped abruptly. I'm fine, came a shaky voice. I need a minute. You've had an hour. Richard kept his tone, neutral. Your children are worried. That was a lie. The children were unconscious, dead to the world after hot baths and warm food. But it worked. The lock clicked, the door opened a crack. Melanie's face appeared, red and swollen from crying. They're really asleep, she whispered. All 3. Sophia checked on them. Something in Melanie's expression crumbled. She sagged against the doorframe. They haven't slept through the night in 6 months. Not since Derek started. She stopped. Shook her head. Sorry. You don't need to hear this. Richard should have walked away. Should have reminded her that this was temporary. That tomorrow she'd be someone else's problem. Instead, he heard himself say, When did you last eat? Melanie blinked. I don't remember. Kitchen, now. He didn't wait for her to argue. Just turned and walked, trusting she'd follow. She did, after a moment's hesitation, bare feet padding silently on marble floors. The kitchen was dark except for the light over the island. Richard opened the refrigerator, pulled out containers. Leftover pasta from the dinner Sophia had made 2 nights ago. Bread. Butter. Sit, he said. Melanie sat on a stool, watching him with wide eyes as he heated the pasta. It occurred to Richard that he couldn't remember the last time he'd been in his own kitchen. Sophia handled meals. He handled everything else. You don't have to do this, Melanie said quietly. I know. Richard set the plate in front of her. Eat. She picked up the fork. Put it down. Picked it up again. I'm not hungry. That's not what your body says. Richard leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You're shaking. When did you last have a real meal? Melanie stared at the pasta. 3 days ago, maybe 4. I was saving everything for the kids. Of course she was. Richard watched her take 1 bite, then another. Then suddenly she was eating like she'd been starving, which she had been. Slow down, he said. You'll make yourself sick. She didn't slow down, didn't stop until the plate was empty. Then she set the fork down and covered her face with her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry you had to see me like this. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing. I don't know how. Melanie's voice broke. That's all I do anymore. Apologize for existing, for being in the way, for not being good enough. Richard's chest tightened. He recognized that voice, that self-loathing. He'd heard it in his mother's words the night before she died. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry I can't protect you better. Your husband is an idiot, Richard said flatly. Melanie's head snapped up. He left you in a gas station with 3 children in the middle of winter. Richard's voice was cold, factual. That makes him either stupid or a coward. Probably both. He's not... Melanie stopped. Actually, you're right. He's both. Something almost like a smile crossed Richard's face. Tell me about him. Why? Because I need to know what I'm dealing with. Melanie went very still. What do you mean? He left you. That doesn't mean he won't come back. Richard's eyes were hard. Men like him always come back. Not because they care, because they can't stand losing control. Melanie's hands started shaking again. She clasped them together to hide it. Derek's ex-Chicago PD. He got fired 2 years ago for excessive force, but he still has friends on the force, connections. She swallowed. He told me if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I never saw my kids again, that he'd use those connections to prove I was unfit. Are you? The question was sharp. Testing. Melanie met his eyes. I kept my children alive for 3 days in a frozen car with $17 and no hope. You tell me. Richard's expression shifted. Something that might have been respect. Fair enough. He hit me, Melanie said suddenly. The words came out fast, like she needed to say them before she lost her nerve. For 6 years. At first it was just pushing, then slapping, then, her voice broke, then worse. And I stayed because I thought I could protect the kids if I stayed. I thought if I was just better, quieter, more careful. She laughed bitterly. God, I was so stupid. You were surviving. I was dying. Melanie's eyes filled with tears. And I was letting my children watch me die. What kind of mother does that? The kind who's trying her best in an impossible situation. Melanie stared at him. Why are you being kind to me? Richard's jaw tightened. He thought about lying, about keeping his walls up, about maintaining the distance he needed to function. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket, opened his photo gallery, found the picture he never showed anyone. He set the phone on the counter between them. Melanie leaned forward. The photograph was old, faded. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes held a small boy. Both were smiling. My mother, Richard said. His voice was flat, controlled. She died in a gas station parking lot when I was 7. My father beat her to death in front of me. Melanie's hand flew to her mouth. I was in the car. She told me to stay in the car no matter what. So I did. Richard's eyes were distant. I watched her die. Watched people walk past. Nobody helped. Nobody stopped. By the time someone called the police, it was too late. Richard. Don't. He pulled the phone back. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you need to understand something. His eyes met hers. I will never let another woman die in a parking lot while I look away. I will never let another child watch their mother suffer. That's the only reason you're here. Don't mistake it for anything else. Melanie nodded slowly. Okay. Tomorrow I'll set you up somewhere safe. An apartment, security, whatever you need to start over. Richard's voice was firm. But you're not going back to him. You understand me? You're done running. I can't afford. I can. I'm not your charity case. No. Richard's eyes were hard. You're my second chance. The words hung between them, heavy. True. Upstairs a child cried out, both of them tensed. That's Mary, Melanie whispered. She has nightmares. Go, Richard said. Melanie hesitated. Thank you. For the food. For listening. For everything. She left before Richard could respond. Alone in the kitchen, Richard stared at his phone, at his mother's face, at the boy he used to be. I'm trying, Mom, he whispered. I'm trying to do better. From upstairs came the sound of Melanie singing softly. A lullaby. Mary's crying faded to hiccups, then silence. Richard closed his eyes. He'd meant what he said. Tomorrow they'd leave. Tomorrow he'd go back to being Richard Grimson, the man who built an empire on blood and fear. But tonight, just for tonight, he let himself imagine something different. Something that felt dangerously like family. Tomorrow didn't come. Not the way Richard planned, anyway. He woke to the smell of coffee and something else, something he couldn't immediately identify. It pulled him from his office where he'd fallen asleep at his desk, still in yesterday's clothes, files spread around him like casualties. The clock read 7:14 a.m. Too early for Sophia. Richard stood, every muscle protesting. He'd dreamed of parking lots and blood and a little girl who looked exactly like Mary asking him why he didn't help. He followed the smell to the kitchen and stopped in the doorway. Melanie stood at the stove, hair tied back, wearing clothes Sophia must have found for her. Simple jeans and a sweater that hung loose on her thin frame. She was making pancakes. Actual pancakes, not the frozen kind Sophia kept in his freezer for emergencies he never had. "You're up," she said without turning around. "I made coffee. Hope that's okay. I couldn't sleep, and the kids won't be awake for another hour, and I needed to do something useful." Richard moved to the coffee pot, poured a cup. The coffee was good, better than Sophia's. He didn't say so. "You don't have to cook for me," he said instead. "I know." Melanie flipped a pancake with practiced ease. "But you fed me last night. This is..." She paused. "This is me saying thank you without actually saying it, since you told me to stop apologizing." Despite himself, Richard's mouth almost curved. Almost. "How are the children?" "Still asleep. Mary had 2 more nightmares, but she settled faster, each time." Melanie's voice was soft. "Isaac wet the bed. He hasn't done that in 2 years. I think..." She swallowed. "I think he was scared if he left the room to find the bathroom. We'd be gone when he came back." Richard's chest tightened. "Did you tell him that won't happen?" "I told him we're safe now." Melanie turned to face him. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear, determined. "I told him that the man who helped us wouldn't let anything bad happen to us." "You shouldn't make promises like that." "Why not?" She held his gaze. "Aren't you the kind of man who keeps his word?" Richard didn't answer. Because the truth was complicated. He kept his word to his men, to his business partners, to the people who paid for his protection. But to random women and children, that wasn't part of his code, except it was now, apparently. "I called around this morning," he said, changing the subject. "There's an apartment available in Lincoln Park. Safe neighborhood. Security on every floor. Have you moved in by this afternoon?" Melanie's hands stilled on the spatula. That's really generous, but I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because apartments in Lincoln Park aren't cheap, and I don't have a job or references or any way to pay you back. I don't need you to pay me back, but I need to." Melanie's voice was firm. "I need to not be someone's charity case. I need my children to see their mother stand on her own feet, even if those feet are shaky." Richard studied her, the set of her shoulders, the stubborn tilt of her chin. She reminded him of his mother, that same quiet strength wrapped in exhaustion. "Fine," he said. "You want to earn it? I need someone to manage this house." Melanie blinked. "What?" "Sophia's getting older. She can't handle everything alone anymore. Cooking, cleaning, managing schedules." Richard leaned against the counter. "You're hired. You don't even know if I can... Can you cook?" "Yes." "Can you clean?" "Yes." "Can you follow instructions?" "Yes." "Then you're qualified." Richard drained his coffee. "Salary is $70,000 a year, health insurance included. You and the children live here. Separate wing, your own space." Melanie's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's insane." "That's the offer." "Why would you do this?" Richard met her eyes. "Because you need a job, and I need someone I can trust in my house. Someone who isn't going to steal from me or sell information about my life to the highest bidder. He paused. Someone who has as much to lose as I do. It was manipulation. Richard knew it. But it was also true. Melanie studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, but I have conditions. Of course you do. My children don't see anything illegal, ever. I don't care what kind of business you're in, but they don't see it. Agreed. I work normal hours. I'm not on call 24/7. My kids need a mother who's present. Agreed. And if Derek finds us... Melanie's voice wavered. If he shows up here, you let me handle it. I don't want you... She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. If your ex-husband shows up here, Richard said quietly, I will handle it however I see fit. That's not negotiable. Fear flashed across Melanie's face, but underneath it was something else, something that looked almost like relief. Okay, she whispered. They stood there in the morning light, the smell of pancakes filling the silence. Somewhere upstairs, a child laughed. Then another voice joined in, Mary and Isaac, awake and already fighting over something. Melanie's expression softened. I should go, Richard said. I'll handle breakfast. She looked at the stove, at him. You know how to cook? I know how to not burn pancakes. That almost smile crossed her face again. Then she was gone, padding up the stairs toward her children's voices. Richard stood alone in the kitchen. He flipped the pancakes. They were perfect, golden brown. Exactly how his mother used to make them on Sunday mornings before everything went to hell. This is temporary, he told himself, just until she gets on her feet. But he'd been telling himself that for 12 hours now, and he was starting to realize it might be a lie. The children tumbled into the kitchen 20 minutes later like a small tornado. Mary immediately climbed onto a stool and announced, I'm hungry enough to eat a horse. We have pancakes, not horses, Richard said flatly. Mary giggled. You're funny. No one had ever called Richard funny before. Isaac approached more carefully, staying close to his mother. He studied Richard with serious 6-year-old eyes. Are you rich? Isaac. Melanie's face flushed. That's not polite. It's fine. Richard set plates in front of each child. Yes, I'm rich. How rich? Mary asked, mouth already full of pancake. Rich enough that you don't have to worry about being cold or hungry again. Something shifted in Isaac's expression. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Zoe, the 2-year-old, had been silent until now. She climbed off Melanie's lap, walked around the island with her worn teddy bear clutched tight, and stopped in front of Richard. She looked up at him with enormous eyes. Then, without warning, she raised her arms. The universal toddler signal for pick me up. Richard froze. Zoe, no, Melanie said quickly. Mr. Grimson doesn't... But Richard was already moving. He lifted the little girl with surprising gentleness, settling her on his hip like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Zoe rested her head against his chest and sighed, a deep, contented sound. She never does that, Melanie breathed. She doesn't trust anyone, not after Derek. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Richard stood very still. This tiny human draped against him like he was safe harbor in a storm. He could feel her heartbeat, feel the way she relaxed completely, like she knew, somehow knew, that he would die before he let anything hurt her. Tio, Zoe mumbled against his shirt. What did she say? Richard's voice came out rougher than intended. Tio, Melanie whispered. It means uncle in Portuguese. My mother was Brazilian. I used to speak it with the kids, but Derek hated... She stopped, started again. She's calling you uncle. Richard looked down at the child in his arms, at Mary eating pancakes and chattering about nothing, at Isaac watching him with careful hope, at Melanie standing in his kitchen like she belonged there. This was supposed to be temporary. One night, maybe two. Not this. Not them making themselves at home in his life. I have to go, Richard said abruptly. He handed Zoe back to Melanie. Meeting downtown. I'll be back late. Sophia will be here if you need anything. He was out of the kitchen before Melanie could respond. But he felt her eyes on his back. Felt her understanding exactly what he was doing. Running. Because Richard Grimson didn't know how to handle children who trusted him. Didn't know how to handle a woman who looked at him like he wasn't a monster. Didn't know how to handle the feeling blooming in his chest that felt dangerously like something he'd sworn never to feel again. Hope was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. But as he drove toward the city, Zoe's small Tio echoed in his mind, like a promise he hadn't meant to make. Like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Like a promise that terrified him more than any bullet ever had. The meeting with Kozlov went exactly as Richard expected. Tense, calculated, ending with a handshake that felt like a temporary truce between predators. By the time he pulled back through his gates at 11 p.m., exhaustion had settled into his bones like concrete. The mansion should have been dark, quiet. Instead, light spilled from the kitchen windows. Richard walked inside to find chaos. Mary sat at the kitchen table covered in flour, helping Melanie roll out what appeared to be cookie dough. Isaac was reading aloud from a children's book, showing Zoe the pictures. Sophia sat with them, laughing at something Mary had said. They all looked up when Richard entered. Tio Dom! Mary launched herself off her chair and ran to him. She was at his legs before he could move, hugging his knees with sticky hands. We're making cookies. Want to help? Richard's brain short-circuited somewhere between Tio Dom and want to help. She means Mr. Grimson, Melanie said quickly, flour dusting her cheek. Mary, we talked about this. But Tio Dom is easier, Mary insisted. She looked up at Richard with complete trust. Can I call you that? Please? Richard had ended men's lives with less hesitation than this moment required. He looked at Melanie, whose expression said I tried to stop her, I swear. It's fine, Richard heard himself say. Mary beamed. Come help. Mommy's teaching us her grandma's recipe. Before Richard could protest, Mary had dragged him to the table. Melanie pushed a ball of dough toward him, not quite, meeting his eyes. You don't have to. I'm here now. Richard shrugged off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves. Might as well. For the next hour, Richard Grimson, a man who'd ordered executions, negotiated arms deals, and built an empire on fear, learned how to cut cookie dough into shapes while a 4-year-old explained why stars were better than hearts. Because stars are in the sky, Mary said seriously, and the sky is where angels live. My mommy says Vovo is an angel now. Vovo was my mom, Melanie said softly. She passed 2 years ago, brain cancer. I'm sorry, Richard said, and meant it. She would have liked you. Melanie's smile was sad. She always said the most dangerous men were the ones who knew how to be gentle. Their eyes met across the table, held. Tio Dom, you're squishing the star. Mary's voice broke the moment. Richard looked down. He'd completely mangled the cookie. Looks fine to me, he said. It looks like a blob. Artistic liberty. Mary giggled so hard she nearly fell off her chair. Later, after the cookies were baked and the children were in bed, Richard found himself still in the kitchen. Melanie was washing dishes, humming that same lullaby from 2 nights ago. You don't have to do that, Richard said. That's Sophia's job. Sophia went to bed an hour ago, and I like doing dishes. Melanie glanced at him. Helps me think. About what? About how weird my life is now. She dried her hands on a towel. 3 days ago, I was living in my car. Now I'm making cookies in a mansion with a man who—" She trailed off. Who what? Who scares me and comforts me at the same time. Melanie's honesty was startling. You know what the really twisted part is? I feel safer here, with you, a man I know is dangerous, than I ever felt with Derek. What does that say about me? It says you have good instincts. Does it? Melanie leaned against the counter. Because my instincts told me to marry Derek. My instincts told me to stay for 6 years. Your instincts told you to protect your children. Richard's voice was firm. That's all that matters. Melanie looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly, Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. The photo on your desk, the one you keep face down. She paused. Is that your mother? Richard's jaw tightened. You went in my office? Isaac's ball rolled in there this afternoon. I was just getting it. I didn't mean to snoop. Melanie's eyes were apologetic. But I saw the photo. And I wondered. Richard should have shut this down. Should have reminded her that his personal life was none of her business. Instead, he found himself walking to his office. Melanie followed. He picked up the photograph, stared at it for a moment, then handed it to her. Her name was Isabella, he said. Bella. She was 26 when she died. I was 7. Melanie studied the photo. She was beautiful. She was trapped. Richard's voice was flat, controlled. My father was a cop. Everyone loved him. Charming, funny, protective of his family. His hands clenched. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. Richard. She tried to leave 3 times. Each time he found her. Each time it got worse. Richard took the photo back, set it down. The 4th time, she didn't leave. She just gave up. Stopped fighting. I remember asking her why she wouldn't run away with me, and she said, his voice cracked, Baby, sometimes running makes it worse. Sometimes you just survive until you can't anymore. Melanie's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks later, we were at that gas station. She'd told him she wanted a divorce. He followed us, parked next to us. I remember her telling me to stay in the car, to close my eyes, but I didn't. Richard's voice was hollow now. I watched him beat her until she stopped moving. Then he got in his car and drove away. Oh my God. He called the police himself, claimed he found her like that. They believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was one of them. Richard laughed bitterly. He died 10 years later, heart attack. Never spent a day in jail. Melanie moved without thinking. She closed the distance between them and did something no one had done in 2 decades. She touched him. Her hand found his, squeezed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry you went through that. Richard looked down at their joined hands. He should pull away, should maintain distance, should remember who he was and what he'd become. But he didn't. I made a promise that night, he said, that I would never let another child watch their mother die. Never look away, never be too late again. He met her eyes. That's why I can't send you away. That's why you're staying here. Not because I'm good, because I'm trying to make up for being 7 years old and powerless. You were a child. I should have done something. Like what? Melanie's voice was fierce now. You were 7, Richard. You were a baby. There was nothing you could do. I could have screamed, run for help, something. Your mother told you to stay in the car. You were being a good boy. You were doing what she asked. Melanie squeezed his hand harder. You are not responsible for your father's evil. Richard's eyes burned. He hadn't cried in 23 years, wouldn't cry now. But something inside him was cracking, and Melanie's hand was the only thing keeping him together. "Your children are lucky," he said roughly, "to have a mother who fights for them. Your mother fought too. The fact that she lost doesn't mean she didn't fight." Melanie's thumb brushed across his knuckles. "And you're still fighting for her. Every time you help someone like me. Every time you keep your promise." The words hit like a physical blow. Richard pulled his hand away, stepped back. "You should get some sleep." "Richard, it's late." His voice was firm, final. "We both have long days tomorrow." Melanie studied him, saw the walls going back up, the armor sliding into place. "Okay," she said softly. "Good night." She left. Richard stood alone in his office, staring at his mother's photograph. "I'm trying, Mom," he whispered. "I'm trying so hard." But he couldn't tell if he was trying to keep his promise or trying not to fail again. Couldn't tell if having Melanie and the children here was redemption or just another way to hurt when they eventually left. Because they would leave. Eventually. Everyone always did. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Melanie fell into routine with surprising ease. Cooking breakfast before Richard left for meetings he never explained. Managing Sophia's schedule. Helping Isaac with first-grade homework at the kitchen table while Mary colored and Zoe napped. The mansion stopped feeling like a mausoleum and started feeling like something else. Something dangerous. Richard told himself he was maintaining distance. But distance was hard when Isaac asked him to read bedtime stories. When Mary insisted he needed to see her latest drawing. When Zoe reached for him every time he walked into a room. When Melanie looked at him like he was a man, not a monster. It was Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Richard was in his office reviewing territory maps when his phone rang. Marcus, his second-in-command, never called unless it was important. "Talk," Richard said. "We have a problem." Marcus's voice was tight. "Derek Carter, ex-Chicago PD. He's been asking around about his wife." Richard's blood went cold. "What kind of asking?" "The kind that involves calling in favors. Checking hospitals, shelters, known safe houses." Marcus paused. "Someone told him they saw a woman matching Melanie's description getting into a black Audi 3 weeks ago, at a gas station on the south side." "How many people in this city drive black Audis?" "Hundreds, but he's narrowing it down. And rich." Marcus's voice dropped. "He's got friends, dirty cops who owe him. If he finds out she's with you..." "He won't. He will. It's just a matter of time." Richard ended the call, sat very still. He could send Melanie away, set her up somewhere far from Chicago, somewhere Derek would never find her. But Derek had found her before, would find her again. Men like Derek always did. Which meant Richard had 2 choices. Let Melanie leave and hope for the best, or keep her close and prepare for the worst. It wasn't really a choice at all. Richard found Melanie in the kitchen, making dinner while Mary set the table, and Isaac helped Zoe build a block tower in the corner. "Can I talk to you?" Richard said. "Alone." Melanie looked up, saw something in his face. "Mary, watch your sisters. I'll be right back." They went to Richard's office. He closed the door. "What's wrong?" Melanie asked. "Your husband is looking for you." The color drained from Melanie's face. "How do you know?" "I have people who hear things." Richard's voice was controlled, professional. "He's been making inquiries. He knows you got into a black Audi. It's only a matter of time before. I need to leave." Melanie was already moving toward the door. "I'll take the kids. We'll go somewhere he can't find us." "There is nowhere he can't find you." Richard's voice stopped her. "Men like Derek don't give up. They hunt until they find what they think belongs to them." Then what do I do? Melanie's voice broke. What am I supposed to do? Richard met her eyes. You stay. And you let me handle this. Handle it how? However I need to. Understanding dawned on Melanie's face, followed by fear. You mean kill him? Richard didn't answer. Didn't need to. No. Melanie shook her head. No, I won't let you. Let me? Richard's voice was sharp. This isn't about permission. This is about keeping you and your children safe. By becoming a murderer. I'm already a murderer. The words came out flat, cold. Don't pretend you don't know what I am. Melanie flinched. I know what you do, but this is different. This is personal. This is survival. Richard's jaw was tight. Your husband is ex-police with connections. He's violent. He's obsessed. If he finds you, what do you think happens? You think he just walks away? You think he lets you go? I think killing him makes you just as bad as him. The words hung between them like a knife. Richard's expression went cold, closed. Then you don't understand anything about how this world works. I understand that my children don't need to grow up, knowing someone died because of them. Melanie's voice was fierce. I understand that Isaac already has nightmares about his father. I won't give him nightmares about you too. Then what's your solution? Wait until Derek shows up? Let him take you back? Hope he doesn't kill you this time? There has to be another way. There isn't. Then find one, Melanie was shouting now. You're supposed to be this powerful man, right? So use that power for something other than violence. Figure it out. Richard stared at her. You're asking me to fight with one hand tied behind my back. I'm asking you to be better than him. The words hit like a slap. Richard turned away, looked out the window at the city lights. You should pack. I'll arrange a safe house, somewhere far from here. You're sending us away. I'm keeping you alive. By pushing us out. Melanie's voice was hollow. Of course. That's what you do, isn't it? Push people away before they can leave first. Richard's hands clenched. Don't psychoanalyze me. Why not? Someone should. Melanie moved closer. You let us in for 3 weeks. Let Isaac call you Tio. Let Mary draw pictures of our family with you in it. Let Zoe fall asleep in your arms. Her voice cracked. You let me start to trust you. Start to think maybe we could actually be safe here. And now you're throwing us out because keeping us means you have to feel something. I feel plenty. Do you? Or do you just lock everything away where it can't hurt? You? Richard spun around. You want to know what I feel? I feel terrified. Terrified that I'll fail you the same way I failed my mother. Terrified that Derek will get past my security and hurt you. Terrified that one day I'll come home and find you dead and your children traumatized, and it'll be my fault because I wasn't good enough, smart enough, fast enough. He stopped, breathed hard. Melanie was staring at him with wide eyes. You asked what I feel, Richard said roughly. That's what I feel. Every single day. Silence. Then, softly. Then feel it with us, not alone. Richard looked at her. At this woman who'd been beaten down by life but refused to stay down. Who looked at him and saw past the monster to the scared 7-year-old boy underneath. I don't know how, he admitted. Neither do I. Melanie's smile was sad. But we figure it out together. That's what families do. The word family landed like a bomb. We're not, Richard started. Aren't we? Melanie challenged. Isaac reads to you every night. Mary asks you to fix her toys before she asks me. Zoe cries if you leave without saying goodbye. She paused. And I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in 6 years. Richard's throat was tight. Please don't send us away, Melanie whispered. Please, we'll be careful. We'll stay inside. Whatever you need. Just don't. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Richard made a decision that terrified him more than any gun ever had. You stay, he said. But we do this my way. Increase security. No leaving the property without me. And if Derek gets close, he met her eyes. I handle it, however I need to. That's not negotiable. Richard, those are the terms. Take them or leave. Melanie studied him, saw the fear underneath the hardness, the desperation he was trying to hide. Okay, she said. We stay. Richard nodded once. Good. But as Melanie left, Richard stood alone in his office, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, or the only choice that mattered. Derek Carter found them on a Thursday. Richard was in meetings all day, the kind where phones stayed off and exits were watched. He didn't get Marcus's message until 4 p.m. Security breach. East Gate. He's here. Richard was in his car before the sentence finished processing. He called Melanie. No answer. Called the house line. No answer. Called Sophia. Mr. Grimson, thank God. Where's Melanie? Upstairs with the children. We're locked in the master bedroom. Like you taught us. But he's in the house. He's... Glass shattered in the background. A man's voice, drunk and furious. Melanie, I know you're here. Get out here now. Richard's hands were white on the steering wheel. Stay locked in. Do not open that door for anyone except me, understand? Yes, sir. Richard called Marcus. Where are my men? On their way. 10 minutes out. I'll be there in 5. Richard drove like death itself was chasing him. Because it was. Death in the form of a drunken ex-cop who'd somehow gotten past his security and was currently tearing through his house looking for the woman Richard had promised to protect. The woman he'd failed. Again. He pulled through his gates. Someone had cut the lock, and saw Derek's truck parked at an angle, driver's door still open. Classical stalker behavior. Not planning to stay long. Richard was inside in seconds. The living room was destroyed. Furniture overturned. Lamp shattered. Photos ripped off walls. Melanie. Derek's voice came from upstairs. You think you can hide from me? In some rich asshole's house? Richard took the stairs 3 at a time. Found Derek on the 2nd floor, methodically trying door handles. This one. Derek kicked a door. It held. Or this one. Another kick. Come on, baby. Don't make me break down every door. Carter. Derek spun around. He was exactly what Richard expected. Tall, muscular, with the entitled rage of a man used to getting his way. Drunk enough to be stupid, but not enough to be harmless. Who the fuck are you? Derek slurred. The person who's going to remove you from my property. Richard's voice was ice. Voluntarily or otherwise. Derek laughed. You're fucking my wife. I'm protecting your wife. There's a difference. She's not your wife. She's mine. Derek took a step forward. And I'm taking her home. No. Richard didn't move. You're leaving. Now. Make me. Richard had ended men for less, had buried people for looking at him wrong. Every instinct screamed to pull the gun tucked in his waistband and end this threat permanently. But Melanie's words echoed. I won't let you become a murderer for us. Be better than him. You have 2 choices, Richard said calmly. Walk out now, or I call the police and have you arrested for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and violating the restraining order I filed yesterday. Derek's eyes widened. What restraining order? The one Melanie filed against you, with the help of a very good lawyer who specializes in domestic violence cases. Richard pulled out his phone, showed the documentation. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of her. You're currently in her place of residence. That's a felony. It was a bluff. Richard had filed the paperwork, but it wasn't processed yet. But Derek was drunk enough not to check. You can't do this, Derek snarled. I already did. She's my wife. She's her own person, and she doesn't want you. Derek's face went purple. You turned her against me. No, you did that yourself. Every time you hit her. Every time you scared her children. Every time you made her feel small. Richard's voice was cutting. She didn't need my help hating you. You gave her plenty of reasons on your own. Derek lunged. Richard moved on instinct, caught Derek's arm, twisted, had him face first against the wall in seconds. It was over before it began. Let me go, Derek gasped. Listen carefully. Richard's voice was deadly quiet. You're going to leave this house. You're going to stay away from Melanie. You're going to sign whatever divorce papers her lawyer sends you. And you're never going to contact her or her children again. Or what? Or I stop being nice. Richard leaned closer. You know what I do, Carter? I make people disappear. I've buried men in concrete. Dropped them in the lake. Sent them to countries where no one asks questions. He paused. You think because you were a cop, you're special? You're not. You're just another violent asshole who thinks he owns someone. And I eat men like you for breakfast. Derek was shaking now. You can't. I can. I will. The only reason I haven't is because Melanie asked me not to. Richard tightened his grip. She thinks you deserve a chance to walk away. I think you deserve a bullet. Don't make me prove I'm right. Richard released him, stepped back. Derek scrambled toward the stairs, tripping, catching himself. At the top of the stairs, he turned. This isn't over. Yes, Richard said. It is. Derek left. Richard heard the truck start, peel out of the driveway. Only then did he let himself breathe. Richard? He turned. Melanie stood in the doorway of the master bedroom. Her face was pale. Mary clung to her legs. Isaac held Zoe, both children crying. Is he gone? Melanie whispered. He's gone. Did you... She couldn't finish. I didn't kill him. Richard's voice was hollow. You asked me to be better than him. So I was. Melanie moved, forward, threw her arms around him. Richard stood frozen. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him. Couldn't remember the last time touch meant comfort instead of threat. Thank you, Melanie said into his chest. Thank you for keeping your promise. Richard's arms came up slowly, wrapped around her, held her like she was the only solid thing in the world. I won't always be able to do this, he said roughly. I won't always be able to be the good guy. I know. Melanie pulled back, looked up at him. But you tried today. That's what matters. Mary appeared at Richard's side. Teodam, are you okay? The question broke something inside him. A 4-year-old was asking if he was okay. I'm fine, Princess. You're shaking. Richard looked down. She was right. Come on, Melanie said softly. Let's go downstairs. Sophia's making hot chocolate. They descended as a group. Melanie, the 3 children, and Richard. Like a family. Like they'd been doing this forever. In the sauna kitchen, while Sophia fussed over the children and Melanie cleaned minor cuts on Isaac's hands from where he'd grabbed broken glass, Richard stood apart, watching. This was what he'd been protecting. Not just Melanie, not just the children. This fragile, imperfect, beautiful thing that looked like safety and felt like home. Marcus arrived with security sweep teams. You should have called me in. I handled it. You let him walk away. I did. Marcus studied him. You're getting soft. Maybe. Richard didn't take his eyes off Melanie. Or maybe I'm finally figuring out what's worth fighting for. That night, after the children were asleep and Sophia had gone to her quarters and the security team had cleared out, Richard found Melanie in the living room. She was cleaning up the destruction Derek had left behind. "Leave it," Richard said. "I'll have people handle it tomorrow." "I need to do something." Melanie's hands were shaking. "I need to feel useful." Richard took the broken lamp from her hands, set it down, took her hands in his. "You could have died today," he said. "But I didn't. Because I got lucky. Because Derek was drunk. Because you came for us." Melanie squeezed his hands. "You kept your promise." Richard pulled her closer, not quite touching, just close enough to feel her warmth. "I can't lose you," he said. The words came out broken, raw. "I can't—" He couldn't finish. Melanie reached up, touched his face. "You won't. You don't know that. Neither do you." Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. "But we're here now. That's what matters." Richard closed his eyes. Let himself feel this. Feel her. Feel the terrifying possibility that maybe he wasn't meant to be alone forever. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not just tonight. Stay." "Where else would I go?" Melanie smiled through tears. "You're stuck with us, Richard Grimson." And for the first time in 23 years, being stuck didn't feel like a trap. It felt like salvation. 6 months later, Richard stood in his kitchen making pancakes, while Mary directed him like a tiny drill sergeant. "More chocolate chips, Teodom. If I add more chocolate chips, these won't be pancakes. They'll be diabetes." Mary giggled. "What's diabetes?" "Something your mother will kill me for giving you." "I heard that," Melanie called from the dining room where she was helping Isaac with a school project. "And you're right." Richard shook his head, but he was smiling. Actually, smiling. Marcus had commented on it last week. "You know you smile now, right? It's disturbing." The past 6 months had been the strangest of Richard's life. Derek had signed the divorce papers 3 weeks after the break-in. Richard's lawyer, and the very real restraining order that followed, had made sure of it. Derek had also lost his PI license after Richard's people had quietly leaked information about his violent history to the right authorities. Last Richard heard, Derek was in rehab in, Montana. Court-ordered. Good. Meanwhile, Melanie had transformed the mansion. Not just physically, though there were now children's drawings on the refrigerator and toys in every room, but energetically. The place felt alive. Felt like people actually lived here, instead of just existing. Isaac had started calling Richard Dad 2 months ago. It had happened casually. "Dad, can you help me with my math?" And Richard had frozen mid-sentence. Isaac had looked terrified, like he'd made a mistake. But Richard had just nodded and said, "Of course, son." He'd cried in his office later that night. Called it allergies when Melanie found him. She'd known better, had held him anyway. Mary's school had a father-daughter dance next week. She'd asked Richard to take her, had presented him with a hand-drawn invitation covered in glitter and misspelled words. "Please come to the dance with me, Daddy Dom, love Mary." Richard had that invitation framed on his desk. Zoe, now almost 3, refused. To sleep, unless Richard read her a story first. She'd sit in his lap with her worn teddy bear and fall asleep mid-sentence. Richard would carry her to bed, tuck her in, and stand in the doorway watching her breathe, making sure she was safe, making sure he wasn't too late this time. "Pancakes are ready," Richard called. The children thundered into the kitchen. Melanie followed, looking beautiful in jeans and one of Richard's old sweaters she'd stolen months ago. They ate breakfast as a family, argued about who got the last pancake, laughed when Zoe got syrup in her hair, made plans for the weekend. It was ordinary. It was perfect. After breakfast, Richard helped clean up while Melanie got the kids ready for school. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Territory dispute on the south side. Need your call. Richard stared at the message. 6 months ago, he would have left immediately, would have handled it with violence and intimidation. Now he texted back, "Give them 24 hours to negotiate. If they can't settle it themselves, I'll mediate. You've gone soft. Maybe. But I'm still breathing. How many of our competitors can say the same?" Marcus sent back a laugh emoji. Progress. Richard was learning that power didn't always mean violence. Sometimes it meant being smart enough to avoid it. Ready? Melanie appeared with 3 backpacks and 3 children. Richard drove them to school. Isaac to first grade, Mary to pre-K, Zoe to the daycare program. It was a routine they'd fallen into. Richard liked routines now. Liked the predictability. Liked knowing where everyone was. Liked knowing they were safe. After drop-off, Richard drove Melanie home. They had the house to themselves until 3 p.m. Sometimes they used it for quiet work, Melanie managing the household, Richard handling business remotely. Sometimes they used it for other things. Today felt like an other things day. "Come here," Richard said once they were inside. Melanie walked into his arms like she belonged there. Because she did. "I need to tell you something," Richard said. Melanie pulled back. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. It's..." He paused. "I bought the house next door." "You what?" "The estate next door. It's been for sale for a year. I bought it." Richard took her hands. "I'm converting it into a safe house. For women leaving domestic violence situations. With job training, childcare, legal help. Everything they need to start over." Melanie's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, I'm calling it Bella's house, after my mother." His voice was rough. "I can't save her, but maybe I can save others like her, like you." Melanie threw her arms around his neck. "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I want you to run it." She pulled back. "What?" "You know what they need better than anyone. You've lived it." Richard cupped her face. "I'll fund everything. But I need someone who understands. Someone who won't give up on them. That's you. I don't have a degree. I don't have experience. You have something better. You have empathy. And you have me backing you." Richard smiled slightly. "Say yes." "Yes." Melanie laughed through tears. "God, yes." They kissed. Soft at first, then deeper. Full of promise. When they pulled apart, Melanie was crying. "How did I get so lucky? I'm the lucky one." Richard meant it. "I was dead inside before you. Before them. You brought me back to life. We brought each other back." That afternoon, after picking up the children, they all went to see Bella's house. It was still under construction, but the bones were there. Isaac ran through the halls, imagining where everything would go. Mary declared she wanted to paint murals on the walls. Zoe just held Richard's hand and said, "Pretty house, Daddy." "Daddy." Richard's chest tightened. "Is this really happening?" Melanie whispered. "It's happening." Richard pulled her close. "We're making something good. Something that matters." That night, after the children were asleep, Richard found Melanie on the balcony. She was staring at the stars like she used to stare through the car window when she had nothing. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked. "About how different my life is now." Melanie leaned against him. "A year ago, I thought I was going to die in that relationship. Thought my children would grow up watching me disappear piece by piece." She paused. "Now I'm planning to run a safe house. I'm raising 3 happy children. I'm falling in love with a man who used to terrify me." Richard's heart stopped. You're what? Melanie looked up at him. I love you. I think I have for months. I just wasn't sure if I was allowed to say it. Why wouldn't you be allowed? Because you're you, and You're the woman who saved my life. Richard turned her to face him. I was empty before you, going through motions, keeping promises to ghosts. You made me want to be present, made me want to be better. He took a breath. I love you, Melanie. I love your children. I love the chaos and the noise and the way Isaac asks me impossible math questions and Mary draws on my important documents and Zoe refuses to eat anything green. Melanie laughed through tears. I love you, Richard repeated. And I want this forever. I want to make it official. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Melanie's hands flew to her mouth. I know it's fast, Richard said. I know we've only been doing this 6 months, but I wasted 23 years being alone. I don't want to waste any more. He opened the box. Marry me. Make this family real. It's already real, Melanie whispered. Then make it permanent. Melanie looked at the ring, at Richard, at the life they'd built from nothing. Yes, she said. God, yes. Richard slid the ring on her finger, kissed her like she was oxygen. Behind them, they heard a small voice. Are you getting married? They turned. Mary stood in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. We are, Richard said. So you'll be my daddy for real? I'm already your daddy for real. Richard knelt to her level. The wedding just means I'm promising your mommy that I'll never leave. Mary launched herself at him. I love you, Daddy Dom. Isaac appeared next, rubbing his eyes. What's happening? Tio Dom asked me to marry him, Melanie said. Isaac's face split into the biggest smile Richard had ever seen. Really? So we get to stay here forever? Forever, Richard confirmed. Can I call you Dad now? Like, officially? You can call me whatever you want, son. Isaac hugged Richard tight. Thanks, Dad. Zoe woke up crying. Melanie went to get her. When she came back, Zoe was rubbing her eyes and looking confused. Why is everyone awake? She mumbled. Because we're getting married, Mary announced. What's married? It means Daddy Dom is staying forever. Zoe looked at Richard. You're staying? I'm staying, Princess. Good. Zoe put her head back on Melanie's shoulder. Love you, Daddy. Richard's eyes burned. They stood there as a family. Richard, Melanie, Isaac, Mary, and Zoe. On a balcony overlooking the city Richard had once ruled with fear. Now he ruled it with something else. Purpose, love, hope. We should get these munchkins back to bed, Melanie said. They tucked the children in together. Read stories, sang songs. Promised the monster under the bed was imaginary, but if it wasn't, Daddy Dom would handle it. Later, in their own room, Melanie curled against Richard's chest. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For being brave enough to let us in. Richard kissed her forehead. Thank you for being brave enough to stay. They fell asleep tangled together. Safe. Whole. Elena once believed that asking for help was the same as giving up. That surviving meant suffering alone. That being strong meant never showing weakness. But sometimes strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing when to let someone else carry the weight. When to say, I can't do this anymore. And mean it. When to knock on a stranger's window and hope they'll open the door. Richard thought he was saving Melanie that night at the gas station. Thought he was keeping a promise to a ghost. But the truth is, they saved each other. She taught him that mercy isn't weakness, that love isn't a luxury, that the most powerful thing a man can do isn't build an empire. It's kneel down to a child's level and say, "You're safe now." He taught her that not all strength comes with fists, that some men protect instead of destroy, that asking for help isn't surrender, it's survival. Maybe that's what all of us are searching for. Not perfection, not someone without scars, just someone willing to fight for us when we're too tired to fight for ourselves. Someone who sees our broken pieces and says, "Let me hold those for a while." Because the strongest families aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who break and choose to heal together. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had someone show up for you when you needed it most? Have you been that person for someone else? Your stories matter. Share them. Hit like to support more stories like this, and subscribe to Crimson Stories. We bring you new emotional journeys every single day. Tales of redemption, second chances, and love found in the most unexpected places. Before you go, check out the next video on your screen, or dive into our playlist for more stories that'll make you believe in the power of hope. Thank you for being here. Good night. And remember, even in the darkest places, love finds a way in. You just have to be brave enough to open the door.